The stadium shook with your name echoing across every corner. For a moment, you felt invincible, like the world was in your hands. Years of sacrifice had brought you here, blood, sweat, heartbreak, all leading to this one stage. Every step felt light, every cheer felt like thunder. It was supposed to be your destiny, but destiny is cruel when it decides to test you. One twist, one wrong move, one sound, a snap that tore the silence louder than the cheers. You collapse on the field. The dream you built for a lifetime shattered in a second. The crowd gasped, the world froze. And your heart broke. It wasn't the physical pain that destroyed you. It was knowing your dream had slipped through your fingers. Surgery replaced celebrations. Hospitals replaced stadiums. Crutches replaced trophies. The world moved on. Your teammates moved on. Even your friends moved on. But you were stuck. You stared at the ceiling night after night, drowning in thoughts that refused to stop. Why me? Whispered through your mind like a curse. Why now? Echoed until it drove you insane. What's left without my dream? Doubt took over, first as a whisper, then as a scream. You're finished. You'll never play again. You're worthless now. Those words cut deeper than any injury. You smiled in front of others, pretending you were strong. But when no one was watching, you broke down. Tears soaked your pillow until even crying felt empty. You replayed the injury 1,000 times. The snap, the fall, the silence. Each replay tore your soul apart. Weeks turned into months. The crowd forgot your name. But you could never forget the game. Every highlight of others reminded you of what you lost. Every cheer for someone else sounded like a knife in your chest. For the first time, you weren't the warrior. You were the wounded. And the pain almost killed you inside. But in the middle of all that darkness, a whisper survived. A small voice saying, "Not yet. This is not the end." That voice was fragile, weak, almost drowned by doubt. But you listened. Because deep inside you knew broken doesn't mean finished. And scars don't mean you're weak. They mean you're still alive. That night, you made a decision to fight. The first time you tried to stand, your legs trembled like glass ready to shatter. You took one step, then collapsed, the floor catching your broken body. Tears poured out, not from pain, but from the reminder that you weren't the same anymore. Doctors looked at you with pity, a look that burned more than the injury itself. Family whispered behind closed doors, maybe it's over for them. You heard it. Every word was a knife twisting deeper into your chest. Nights blurred into mornings. But nothing changed except the heaviness in your soul. The mirror became your enemy. You hated the reflection staring back at you. Once you were powerful. Now you were fragile. Once you were admired. Now you felt forgotten. Loneliness became your shadow. It followed you everywhere. Even in crowded rooms, you felt invisible. Friends stopped calling. Messages stopped arriving. You realize people love you when you're winning, but they disappear when you're broken. That truth cut deeper than any injury. You began to believe maybe they were right. Maybe you were finished. You thought about quitting, not just the sport, but life itself. Dark thoughts crept in, whispering lies that sounded like truth. What's the point? No one cares anymore. You'll never come back. These thoughts ate at your soul, night after night. One night, you screamed into your pillow until your throat burned. Rage and heartbreak collided, leaving you shaking in silence. But somewhere inside that silence, a spark survived. It whispered, "Not yet." That whisper became your anchor, stopping you from drowning completely. The next morning, you forced yourself to sit up. It wasn't strength. It wasn't courage. It was just refusal to die where you stood. You dragged yourself to therapy, even when your heart begged you to stay in bed. The therapist looked at you and said, "It will take time," but you had no patience. You wanted your old self back now. That frustration broke you down during every session. You cried after small failures. You cursed your body for betraying you. You punched the walls, your knuckles bleeding, but the pain didn't leave. Yet after every breakdown, you showed up again. No matter how much you hated the process, you refused to stay home. Each day became a war. Each step became a battle, crawling when you couldn't walk, standing when you couldn't run. Every little victory mattered, standing 1 second longer, lifting 1 pound heavier. You celebrated progress no one else noticed because no one else was living inside your pain. The world still doubted you. But something inside whispered louder now. Keep going. You didn't believe in miracles anymore, but you began to believe in discipline. And that was the first sign you were no longer falling. You were fighting. The gym became your new battlefield. Empty, cold, silent. No cameras, no fans, no glory. Just you, pain and discipline. Every step felt like fire burning through your body. Every rep felt like a war against yourself. But impossible was the only road left, and you walked it. People doubted you. Doctors warned you. Friends laughed at you. But you refused to listen. You weren't chasing applause anymore. You were chasing redemption. Sweat became your prayer. Pain became your proof. You turned heartbreak into hunger, loss into lesson, tears into fire. Your knees hit the floor, but your spirit refused to stay down. Darkness pressed against your chest, whispering, "Give up." For a moment, you almost believed it. Almost, but deep inside, a tiny flame flickered. It refused to die. You remembered every time you thought you'd break and didn't. You remembered the faces of those who doubted you. You remembered the promises you made to yourself. That flame grew into fire. You wiped your tears, not because the pain was gone, but because you weren't done. You rose slowly, shaken but rising. Every breath hurt, but every breath reminded you you're still alive. And if you're alive, the fight isn't over. Fear screamed louder. You answered with silence and stepped forward. Every scar burned, but you let them burn. They were proof you endured. The ground beneath you felt heavy, but you dragged yourself on. Voices in your head said, "You can't win." You clenched your fists, whispering, "Watch me try." The fight wasn't fair. It was never meant to be. But unfair battles create the strongest warriors. You didn't ask for this war, but you accepted it. Every heartbreak became your training ground. Every lonely night became your battlefield. Every tear watered the soil where your strength grew. You started to see pain differently, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. It taught you endurance. It taught you resilience. It taught you to stand when everything inside begged you to fall. The moment you chose to keep fighting, that's when the fight truly began. You stopped waiting for rescue. You became your own rescue. And with fire in your eyes, you whispered, "This is where I rise." Slowly, your crutches disappeared. Your limp began to fade. Strength returned. Confidence returned. Hope returned. You weren't just the same athlete. You were stronger, hungrier, unstoppable. The world wanted you broken. You showed up anyway. Every stare felt like a challenge you had to answer. You clenched your fists, not in anger, but in pure willpower. Doubt whispered, "You can't win." You whispered back, "Watch me." Each step forward felt like walking through fire, but you kept walking. Pain struck again, but this time you didn't collapse. You swung back. Life threw another punch. You absorbed it and stood taller. You realized the fight wasn't outside, it was inside. Every battle cry echoed in your chest like thunder. Fear tried to choke you, but courage ripped through its grip. You stopped running from your demons. You turned and faced them. You didn't fight with rage, you fought with purpose. Blood, sweat, and heartbreak dripped together into power. The scars didn't make you weak. They made you unbreakable. Every hit you took only sharpened your resolve. People expected you to quit. Instead, you smiled at the chaos. You weren't fighting to win. You were fighting to rise. The ground shook with each step you refused to give up. Your voice cracked. Your body shook. But your soul screamed louder. Hope wasn't a light. It was a weapon in your hands. You swung with everything life gave you, and then some. Exhaustion begged you to stop. You answer with another strike. Broken bones, sleepless nights, silent tears, all part of the war. You didn't just fight, you endured. You didn't just endure, you adapted. You didn't just adapt, you dominated. The fight became your identity. Every loss turned into fuel. Every setback a spark. You grew stronger in the fire meant to destroy you. You learned true warriors aren't born. They're built in the struggle. Every no carved you into steel. Every betrayal turned into armor. Every heartbreak sharpened your edge. The fight stopped being against them. It became against the weaker you. You refused to fall back. You refused to bow down. Even bleeding, even shaking, you declared, I'm still here. And in that moment, you didn't just survive the fight. You became the fight. The nights of pain didn't disappear, but now they no longer define you. The tears still fell sometimes, but now they watered your growth. What once broke you had now become your foundation. Every scar became a roadmap leading you upward. You weren't the same person who once begged life for mercy. You had changed. Completely, unrecognizably. Where there was weakness, there was now unshakable strength. Where there was fear, there was now courage. Where there was despair, there was now hope. Your heart still carried the cracks, but it glowed through them. The storm outside had quieted, but inside you a fire blazed, a fire that could not be put out. The fire of resilience, the fire of survival, the fire of rebirth. You no longer saw your pain as a curse. It was your training ground. You realized pain hadn't destroyed you. It had introduced you to yourself, to your deepest strength, to your truest courage, to the warrior hidden beneath the wounds. The world thought you were finished. They thought the heartbreak had ended you. But the heartbreak had only rebuilt you into something stronger, into something unstoppable, into something the world could no longer ignore. Every no they threw at you became fuel for your yes. Every door closed on you became a wall you climbed. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every failure became a stepping stone. You rose, not flawless, but fearless. Not perfect, but powerful. Not untouched, but unbreakable. You carried your scars with pride. You carry your pain with strength. You carry your past with wisdom. People asked how you survived, and you said softly, I didn't survive. I transformed. You became the warrior you were always meant to be. And you refused to look back. Every step forward echoed with victory. Every breath you took carried resilience. You walked with fire in your chest. You walked with thunder in your soul. You no longer asked, can I do this? You declare, watch me do this. Doubt no longer lived in you. Fear no longer chained you. Pain no longer defined you. You had redefined yourself. You didn't rise quietly. You rose with purpose. You rose with destiny. You rose with a fire that the world couldn't ignore. Your voice became stronger. Your steps became louder. Your presence became unshakable. You were no longer surviving. You were leading. You weren't just rising for yourself anymore. You were rising for everyone still trapped in the dark. The sunrise didn't just greet you. It crowned you. Because you had become the dawn. You no longer waited for light. You became the light. And everywhere you walked, shadows ran. Your rise wasn't just about healing. It was about transforming, about showing the world that pain is not the end, that heartbreak is not the final chapter, that failure is not fatal. You became proof that pain creates power, proof that heartbreak creates warriors, proof that scars create strength. You became the living reminder that nothing can stop a soul that refuses to quit. The world began to notice. They saw you rise from ashes. They saw you shine where you once broke. They saw you walk with unshakable confidence. They saw you stand taller than your past. And they couldn't help but whisper, this is what rising looks like. You didn't rise to inspire, but they did. You didn't rise to prove them wrong, but you did. You didn't rise to become a legend, but you became one. Your story became their hope. Your scars became their courage. Your rise became their blueprint. And suddenly your pain wasn't wasted. It became your purpose. It became your message. And with fire in your voice, you declared, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of my rise."